Would you ever go back to a gas car?
Not willingly.
Welcome to the EVs with Kaz podcast. Each episode is a conversation with someone who drives an EV on a regular basis. Let's hear from today's guest. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the EVs with Kaz podcast. Today I have Tollak, who has a Tesla Model Y. How's it going?
It's going pretty great. I actually just got back from a photo shoot for the Tesla Club here in San Diego.
Sweet. Nice.
Yeah.
Let's go into your Model Y. So that's what
Sure.
you currently have. When did you get your Model Y?
So I got my Model Y when the stars aligned, roughly late March of 2021. So my Tesla story actually starts a long time before that. And so even though I got it in 21, I had been pining after having a Tesla probably since about 2015, when I first heard about the Model 3 coming along higher than, because I had seen a couple of Tesla Roadsters back in like 2009 or 10. I saw, oh, Tesla does exist. It's cool. But then it's like, that was some sports car, unattainable thing. And then 2012, I remember seeing, or 13, I remember seeing a Model S on the 5 freeway. And yes, we say the before the freeway.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, I saw a Model S. I was like, oh, cool. They're making cars now, not just Roadsters. But then I was like, oh, that's probably some, expensive thing. I'll never have one of those. And then I started hearing about the Model 3 coming around. But in 2015, the Model 3 wasn't here yet. Nobody had seen it yet. And but I knew I wanted to go electric because I have everything I do in my life, I do a lot of driving, both for work and for fun. And I've always been kind of a efficiency or clean energy thing. My family used to do like vegetable oil diesel cars because we were trying to get away from gasoline that route as a family, but I never got a diesel myself. But I kind of found out, I was like, well, how about electric? And I knew about the Volt, and the 2015 was like the last year of the first generation. And I heard a second gen was coming out, and I didn't pull the trigger on the 15 because I was like, well, it's going to have more range, blah, blah, blah. So I knew I wanted to go electric, but I couldn't wait for Model 3. So in 2016, I leased a 2017 Volt, Chevy Volt, with a V, which had 53 miles of range electric and 42 mpg. But I tried to drive it as electric as possible. In fact, I have 2 tanks between Phillips records of over 5,000 miles each. So there were like 10,000 miles I drove on just 2 tanks of gas.
Wow.
And I drove that car probably to almost 70,000 miles. And then my lease was up, and I ended up buying it out with my family, and my sister now drives it. Then I moved on to a 2019 Bolt with a B. And that was a move. In hindsight, I should have bought a Model 3. It was about the same price as an entry-level Model 3 at the time in March 2019. And that was so it was kind of this weird process. March 2019, they announced the Model Y. I'm like, that's the Tesla I really want, because I like the Model 3, but I've always been a hatchback guy, and I like having more room. So I was like, okay, yeah, Model 3 is great, but Model Y, that's what I want. And I assumed it was going to be the same case where the Model 3 was like a 2-year delay to getting your car. So I was like, okay, well, until I can get a Model Y, I'll go get a Bolt. I wanted to go fully electric because I was driving my Volt to the point where I tried to avoid gas at all costs. Like I would go charge on my lunch break. I would plug in even for 10 minutes when I went and get coffee. If I could find a charging station, I would go there. And then that's around the same time I started my Instagram. Was like, okay, I'm going all these places. Let me try to connect the business with the charger, etc. So then I had my Bolt, drove that for about 2 years. I drove 72,000 miles on the Bolt. And then, so the stars aligned where it was like, okay, it was right before the Bolt battery recalls, and I had enough saved up to pay off it. And it was around the time where there were, and this, I guess, talk about delivery. It was when a brand new one would only be about 3 to 6 week wait, but it was the end of the quarter, and they had a couple inventory cars, and here you go. It has everything you want except for the tow hitch, which I still haven't added.
Hmm.
Um, and it ended up being it was a demo car, so I didn't have to wait for an order. It had 1,200 miles on it, and I got a slight discount because of that.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I traded my Bolt in towards the Y, and I've had my Y almost 2 years now.
Nice. Cool.
And I'm at 77,000 miles on the Y.
Wow. Nice. Yeah, you do drive a lot, don't you?
Yeah.
So how was the buying experience for a Tesla? And then maybe you can compare it to the two Chevys that you had.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny that, the reason I went with Chevy was at the time, that was the easiest way to get an EV, that I could walk onto a dealership and there was a Volt or a Bolt, because around that time they couldn't sell them. They're like, nobody wanted them. They didn't want to sell them. So I could walk on and be like, hey, that Volt right there, can I test drive it? How about this Camaro? No, I want a Volt. Why do you want a Volt? Because I want to go electric. Why do you want to go electric? So, but yeah, so back then it was easier to get a Chevy because they had them on the lot. But then with my Tesla, so it was late March 21. I was driving around. I was like, I'm just really itching to because I wanted to pay off the Bolt, and I was like, I want to actually move into Tesla and have a little bit more range. I did a lot of good things with my Bolt, but the limiting factor with me with the Bolt was its 55 kilowatt max charging. And not really the 55, but more so above 55%, it drops down big time. So I was like, okay, the Bolt's range is pretty decent, but getting it back when you really want to get back on the road, that's what takes too long. So I was like, okay, I want to go get more range and faster charging. So I went for a test drive. I test drove a performance one in chill mode, so I didn't get spoiled by a performance one. And I was like, all right, let's do this. I walked back into the Tesla store. You could test drive by yourself, by the way. They let you go about 15 minutes on your own, just as long as you don't mess up the car. And I go back into the store, and he's like, well, how's it going? I was like, yeah, let's see what's out there. So, and then the Tesla associate at the store was able to find a car that was in inventory. They matched me with the VIN. And it actually took me longer to line up my financing than it would have been to get the car. And this was the end of Q1 of 21. So they were really trying to get me the car. But the limiting factor was my rearranging, moving money around. I actually sold Tesla stock to buy my Tesla. That's a whole nother story. That'd be a whole nother video. But so in order to move into the Tesla, I sold some stock to get the down payment ready. And of course that, you have to wait a couple days for that to clear, and then that hits your bank account. And so I ended up taking delivery, I think, April 7th. So it was after the first quarter, but at least I just still don't have to wait 3 or 4 or 10 months to get a car.
Yeah.
The actual process was pretty simple. It's mostly online. Even if you're at the store, they hook you up to your account, and you plop in how much you can put down, and then they find financing for you. And I ended up getting financed through Tesla via Wells Fargo. Yeah. I'm actually thinking about refinancing sometime soon, but yeah, so that's all taken care of in the store. Then you basically start going through the app, and you log into your account, and you see the next steps on your list there, and it says, okay, you've been approved. Car should arrive at this time. Bring these documents with you when it's time for delivery. And then I had another delay on my end the day I was picking it up, because they needed another proof of residency. So do you have a credit card bill that's not a PO box? I was like, okay. So I had to get that. So I waited another 2 hours because of something that's not usual for most people. So
cool. And then, did you have it delivered to you? Did you go pick it up?
I picked it up at the Tesla delivery center in Carlsbad.
Okay.
I know some people get it delivered to the house, but I think because of my scenario, I had to get it at the store.
I see.
So.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, it sounds like a easier process than buying a car. At least when have gotten my cars, there's no like haggling with Tesla, right? It's like that's the price or
Oh my gosh, yeah. The I mean, the only haggling was like just sorting out how much I was going to put down.
mm,
But once it was in, the price is the price. It wasn't haggling about the price. It was more just like, okay, if I put this much down, I get this much interest rate. But the Bolt, oh my gosh, that was ridiculous. Trying to
mm.
get the Bolt was, you sit there for hours just waiting for them to like, talk to the guy in back, and then
Yeah.
you're in back, and then the guy in the back has to talk to another guy in the back, and then they come at you with like, okay, so if this car breaks down, what kind of extra warranties do you want? It's like, so yeah.
Yeah. What kind of area do you live in? So like a city or rural or
Um, Mostly city. It's like so I live in northern San Diego County. I live in an area where it's like half urban, half suburban, and a little bit of rural. And then not too far from that are basically country roads up to like our mountain areas, and that's kind of where I was earlier today. We're getting media ready together. We're going to do a drive through our mountains and go get some apple pie. So
cool.
yeah, there's a lot of variety of surface roads here. You get city traffic, you get freeway traffic, and you get 2-lane roads here and there.
Nice. Can you charge where you live?
Yeah, so I currently rent with my roommate. They own a condo, and we have a 2-car garage. And all that was done was to install a NEMA 1450 outlet right next, because the panel is in the garage, the electrical panel, and so the outlet is right there. And I just plug my Tesla wall connector in, and I charge every night at midnight. We have SDG&E rates. We're on TOU-5 plan with SDG&E, which keeps going up. That's a whole another discussion. But yeah, so we charge our cars at midnight here for the most part. And actually, the first 6 months we lived in that condo, I had my Bolt, and I was actually surviving off public charging because I couldn't charge at home. There's only one outlet in the garage, and my roommate has a Prius Prime. So since that thing needs like, a few hours on a regular outlet to charge, we couldn't share the plug. And so I was able to fast charge on my lunch breaks with my Bolt. And so, yeah, for the first 6 months of living in that condo, I was kind of operating like a normal gas car, and was able to survive off public charging.
Mm-hmm. So since you've logged in at least 70,000 miles on that Y, I'm sure you've had to plug in at a public charging station. How do you feel that the Tesla experience compares with like the Bolt experience for public charging?
Well, so I'll start with the Bolt just to go chronologically. So in terms of fast charging, I actually had a pretty good time with my Bolt, because it was around the time where there were not a lot of EVs around, and so the fast chargers I knew how to find. I knew how to get them going. I had all the memberships. I primarily charged with EVgo and Electrify America back then. EVgo was like you could do a 30-minute session for a $6 flat credit card swipe, and so I was able to try to get a half an hour session that way. I don't really use EVgo much anymore, but I still use Electrify America a lot. And the Bolt had a pretty okay time connecting on CCS. The one thing about the Bolt, which any Bolt owner that drives a lot, you probably know this, is
I think I know where you're going. Yeah.
lifting the handle to make sure it clicks before while it's communicating and getting started, which is one of the many issues with the CCS standards. It's just the actual fit of it is just not quite right on every vehicle. It always feels like something's about to break. Like you put it in there, something's like pulling on it because the cord's so heavy, and I'm just like, okay. But yeah, so the Bolt I fast charged pretty regularly. I did do Lyft with my Bolt as well. That was actually a really good Lyft car. It's kind of like a TARDIS from Doctor Who. It looks, it's a lot bigger on the inside than it looks.
Yeah.
Same with the Model Y, but especially with that car.
Hmm.
Whereas Tesla, as some of my recent reels have been on social media, plug in, starts charging.
Yeah.
It just it just works. The handle is a lot lighter and smaller, and you don't have this big heavy cable, and it's the same plug for both home level 2 charging as it is for supercharging. So it's pretty seamless with the Tesla. And I also have the CCS adapter for the Tesla. In fact, before I got that, I have the CHAdeMO adapter,
Mm.
um, because we didn't have a CCS adapter yet. So I found one as soon as I could, and I actually used it on my Colorado trip. I was able to use charge point stations in between superchargers that were cheap, you know.
Mm.
So a lot of times I'll use non-Tesla charging when it's either closer to me, cheaper, more convenient, or whatever. For me, I don't always need ultra fast charging. As nice as it is, sometimes you don't want to be rushed by how fast your car can charge.
Hmm.
50 kilowatt is almost perfect for like actually getting lunch.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, but the experiences are almost night and day. I have about at least 70,000 miles experience on both sides of the charging plug connections, and
Hmm.
yeah, it's definitely noticeably different. And anybody who hasn't used Tesla doesn't know how easy it is. So
Yeah. How would you compare the prices? I know like the CCS experience was probably earlier and it was probably a little bit cheaper then, but maybe you can kind of ballpark. Is it relatively close the supercharger cost to Electrify America?
well, so Electrify America is pretty much a flat rate wherever you are. Well, at least whatever region you're in. So their guest price is 43 cents a kilowatt hour here in California. But if you have the Pass Plus membership, which is $4 a month, you unlock 31 cents a kilowatt hour any time of day, whatever. So that's usually when I'll choose to use them if it's the middle of the day. Superchargers have a pretty varied price throughout our
Mm.
region. And they're not completely linked to time of day. They're basically linked on how busy they are from everybody using them. And
Mm.
that peak period expanded for a lot of them. Some of them are like 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. It's this high price all day long. Some of them are as high as like 57 cents a kilowatt hour here in San Diego. I've seen some in LA are like 63, but some of them here are still in the mid to high 30s in the middle of the day.
Mm.
And then like if you charge before 8 a.m. or after 10 p.m. at some of them, they're like 25 cents. Oh, by the way, off in the distance, I happen to spy a Ford Lightning. Anyway,
Oh, nice. Nice.
um, so yeah, the supercharging price varies by location and time. So a lot of times, if I'm closer to an Electrify America, I'll go there. And I use now for those that people might be like, well, why is this Tesla owner using the Electrify America network? If I see that station has a line of like Kias and Hyundais and Mach-E's, I'll leave it alone. I'm not going to,
Mm.
try to hog a station for them. But I'll usually find stations where there's at least one or two open, and if someone comes by and says, "I really got to charge," I'll move for them. I'm not that kind of jerk, plug hogger.
Mm.
It's more a matter of convenience and price. And I'm fully aware that Teslas can pretty much charge anywhere, and the other cars are limited by everything except Tesla supercharging.
Mhm. My personal experience with Tesla, I've rented a few, but whenever you rent it, I don't get access to the app. And it's something where if I want to go supercharge, it was either bundled in with the rental or I would pay for it afterwards. And I wasn't really aware of the price, like per kilowatt hour kind of thing.
Hmm.
Yeah, so
Yeah, the app is pretty great.
yeah, so I wish I have had experience with that. My previous guest, Audrey, who has a Model 3, talked a little bit about the app. I don't know if you ever tried to use the app with the Bolt.
Oh boy.
It's like I don't even know what there shouldn't even be. It just don't, yeah. So what do you like about the Tesla app?
It's clean. I mean, in some ways it's kind of limited, but in the ways it works, it works really well. And whenever they add new features, the new features work really well too. The fact that you can precondition the car, I can turn on each seat heater by itself individually. Aside from that recent thing where they said that, oh, it's unsafe to be able to remotely roll up your windows. Thanks, NHTSA, or something like that. But yeah, I was able to. If I left my windows down, I could roll my windows back up. I think that feature's going away because of legislation,
Hmm.
or something like that. But you can control your battery level, like how far it charges. You can change it. You can see how much percentage miles you have. You can even, do other app things like buy your upgrades. You can add your full self-driving. You can go to the Tesla shop. You can buy like all those things on Tesla.com in the app. Um, you can schedule your charging. All your service stuff is through here. So all of your service history and documents and everything's in here. Even has the owner's manual. So it's pretty extensive, and yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think I don't I've tried to use the Bolt app a couple times, and I think I can, without OnStar, I can see how many miles I have on my car. I think it's like you can't really
Yeah.
do much of anything unless you have OnStar.
Do they still have the Bluetooth connect? What do they used to call that? They called that um, it was some sort of corporate trademark term for being able to connect your car with Bluetooth.
Oh, hmm.
I don't know if you remember that, but it was like if you were within range of your car, you could do a couple more features than you could through just the internet, the OnStar link.
Right. Yeah, it probably does. It's one of those things when I first got the car, I tried some of these things out. I tried the app, I tried maybe the Bluetooth thing, and then the app was just really lame. And I remember something else not really working, so I just never touched it after that. So
Yeah.
it probably does. I just got,
I think the link
yeah.
thing would show you your percentage more quickly, and you could like unlock a little bit quicker. But yeah, the fact that everything had to go to the internet through the air, up in space, around and back around to your car to do any sort of command. And of course, that's how the app works for Tesla too. But when you're right next to the car, it's a Bluetooth connection. So if you
Hmm,
unlock it, it happens pretty much instantaneously.
nice.
So
So with having 70,000 miles on that Model Y, have you had to do any kind of service to the car yet?
I've bought tires. I've bought tires. I've put washing fluid in the window there. I have had a battery replacement.
The 12 volt?
No, the main battery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it. I don't always talk about this because again, I'm trying to highlight the benefits, but I have had to replace my battery, and it has a warranty until 120,000 miles, and it basically had a message saying that maximum range had been reduced, and please service soon. And then it got to the point where it said range has been, or the first one was maybe reduced. The next message about a week later, oh, there's an R1S over there. Sorry, I'm in a parking lot, so
Oh, nice.
there's an R1S driving by me right now. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Anyway,
was just talking before about how I forget how lucky we are to live in Southern California where we see Rivians and Ford Lightnings and just like everything.
yeah,
Yeah. Sorry.
yeah. So they got to the point where it said maximum range has been reduced, service ASAP, basically. And the same day I got that, it wouldn't charge. So I was at about a 40% battery level, and it wouldn't supercharge or take level 2. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to take it to the store, otherwise I'm gonna run out of range.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, but then so I took it in. They confirmed it needed a new battery. I still don't know the cause. It could have
Hmm.
been one cell. It could have been a bunch of cells that just failed. Um, it could have been anything. And their solution was that they just swapped the pack out. So the diagnostic of the pack apparently happens back at the mothership in Fremont. And you get a refurbished battery as a replacement, as good as or around the same level of range you had before they swapped it.
Hmm.
So I didn't have very much degradation on my battery before it went down. And I think I still had about 305, 315 showing. It was originally 326,
Okay.
and yeah, I had a sharp downturn of like, oh, okay, 260 on a full charge. Yeah, that's not good. That's way too fast for degradation. So
Mhm.
yeah, so that's the one thing I've had serviced. But the service itself was pretty painless. You take it in, they diagnose it, you get a lift or you get a Uber credit to go where you need to go, and all the communications through the app. They don't start texting you like the dealerships do.
Mhm.
Um, and they quoted me two to 4 weeks, and they ended up getting a battery a week later, and they swapped it out, and then yeah. So as soon as I was under warranty, didn't have to pay for anything.
You're kind of a veteran with EV stuff. Have you ever encountered range anxiety, maybe in the beginning?
Okay, well, in the beginning, if you're counting the volt days, you were pretty much fearless because you had that gas tank.
Sure.
So but the funny thing was, I drove that Volt so efficiently. I learned how to hypermile pretty quickly with that car. I was like, no, I want to, 53. Oh, let's hold my beer. I can do better.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I learned how to hypermile, and I was regularly on my daily drives. My range meter would say 60. Sometimes it would say 65. So I was driving way more efficient with that car and barely using any gas. Um, and so I tried to pretend that that was all I could use.
Mm.
And so I got really used to knowing how to do a level 2 strategy. And that car only charged at 3.6 kilo.
Oh, whoa. That's slow. Yeah.
Yeah, the Gen 1 was 3.3 and the Gen 2 was 3.6 because of a slightly bigger battery. And unfortunately, the 2019s had the option to have a 7.2 kilowatt. I was like, why didn't you do that on the beginning of Gen 2? Because that would
Yeah.
cut it from 4 hours to 2 hours. That would feel like fast charging on a Volt.
Hmm.
Anyway, so I had a strategy. I knew how to do that. You go get lunch, you plug in, blah blah blah. I found every Volta station I could find because I wanted it also to be as cheap as possible too.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and that mentality kind of extended into my Bolt. So I was in the kind of the 300-mile club with my Bolt. I had the 2019 was the last year they made it with a 238-mile battery. And literally like 2 months after I bought my Bolt, they announced the 2020s, which were going to have 258 or something like. I was like, oh, come on. But anyway, with my Bolt, I was able to, I averaged the same kind of efficiency, and I was able to get, 270 to about 300 on a Bolt battery, except on road trips. But I did take it to Vegas, where I did have pretty good miles per kilowatt hour. I was driving like 57 in some spots, but but that's because the Bolt charges so slow. But in terms of anxiety of running out, I was always aware of how much energy I had, so I never really pushed it to the point where I was scared. The one story I have from my Bolt, though, is there was a time I was driving back from El Centro. So El Centro to San Diego is essentially uphill because El Centro is like almost down by sea level, I think. And to get back to San Diego, you have to go up at least 4,000 feet and down and up 4,000 again, like 3 times. So the problem was not only there was no real fast charging in El Centro at the time. This was probably like late 2019. I think it was before Electrify America was open there. And I knew there was level 2 charging there. I was a big plug share, by the way. So in terms of my experience, I was a plug share expert pretty much. I knew how to like interpret what's going on with that plug share. I contributed to the updating of the stations. I would add photos. So based on using PlugShare, I could determine that there was like a couple level 2 stations. I was basically visiting someone that was there and was able to charge while going out to dinner. But at level 2, you're only getting 24 miles an hour. So I only gained back about 50 miles by the time I had to head back to San Diego. And I think I left El Centro with like 70% battery in my Bolt, and the problem was I had a headwind coming back. It was gnarly. It was like moving my car headwind going through the desert at night. So that was what made me a little bit worried. I was like, so I drove about 55 into the wind because that meant I was probably driving like 75, 80 with how strong the winds were.
Mm.
And that was probably my one time of like, because between San Diego and El Centro, there's not really any fast charging. I was like, okay, if I can make it to Viejas, which has a couple of level 2 chargers, I could at least, camp out for the night. But
Mhm.
that was probably the closest I ever got a little worried with my Bolt. But even then, I got back to San Diego with like 20% battery.
Nice.
So actually, I think it was 17. I think it was
Okay.
17.
Okay. Yeah.
With the
Cool.
Model Y, I've pushed it as low as, in terms of like being away from home, I've pushed it as far as I think 3% before I plugged in. There's every once in a while I get a Lyft ride where I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna do, you see the calculus in front of the face. Um, you drop somebody off, and then you find a supercharger, and then it's 3%. So there was like one time I was at 3%, and there was one time I was at 7% down in San Clemente. Aside from that, I've always been well above 10 or 20% without even worrying. So
Mhm.
you get to know your car. You really do. It's only if you're living in like drastic temperature swings out of nowhere, like I guess if you're like, in some state where it's like, okay, it's 70 degrees today and tomorrow it's gonna be freezing, and you didn't plan for that. You're like, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. I feel like with this cold weather that we've been having here in Southern California, where I wake up and it's 40 degrees, which is freezing for me.
Yeah.
That affects the battery, and then I kind of have to readjust my knowledge of the range of the car. But other than that, yeah, I feel the same. Once you get to know your car, it's not really that big of a deal.
Yeah. And yeah,
Um,
once while you're getting to know your car, just pay attention to, it it gives you warnings.
right, right,
I'm
right.
getting the sun out of my eye here.
With your Model Y, what are some of your likes and dislikes for that car?
Well, as I tell a lot of my Lyft passengers that ask me this almost same question, it's pretty much for me almost the perfect all-around car. It's got tons of room. There's lots of headroom, leg room. It's got, if you've been in a Model 3 versus a Model Y, even though they're based on the same platform, being in the cars is a completely different experience size-wise.
Mhm.
So it's much more comfortable in the Model Y. Lots of room. I can fit, decent amount of suitcases in the back. You can sleep in here. It's got the frunk. It's, it is, as long as you bought one of the dual motor ones, which is 99% of them at this point. Um, the all-wheel drive is fantastic. I loved driving my Model Y through Colorado. I took a nice big road trip in the summer of 21, and you go up 10,000 feet like it's nothing. And as long as you can make to the top, you can make it back down.
Mhm.
Because you just get so much energy back. And it's a great road tripper. It's comfortable. The seats are adjustable. Um, I would say my number one dislike, and it's more just an absence rather than dislike, is I would like it more. Let me say that if it had ventilated seats. Being in
Mm.
California, we deal with warmer weather more often than colder. So as amazing as the heated seats are, which I've been using a lot lately, and my passengers really like having the rear heated seats. I would love to have ventilated seats because during the summer, that's like the number one thing. The AC is great. It's just the actual sitting on the seat, you start to sweat just because there's no airflow down your back or underneath your legs. And I remember sitting on the Rivian. I went to check out the Rivian in Venice, and I sat down. I was like, okay, the seat's kind of cool because it's morning, and the leather is kind of cool when you first sit on it. But like 10 minutes into sitting in the car, you're like, man, this seat is cold. Oh, the vented seats are on, and I was like, okay, yep, I want vented seats. So
Nice.
if we can have that, I don't know if they're ever going to do that for the 3 and the Y, but that's probably my number one wish is just to have vented seats,
Mm.
just because I would use them far more often than my heated seats. I mean, if the frunk was a little bigger, but the fact that we have a frunk,
Yeah.
that was the thing is the Bolt doesn't have a frunk. There's all
Yep.
that wiring up front.
Yeah.
This kind of segues into, or I guess, recent news is that, with all the price drops on the Model Y and me being about 2 years into owning one, I've been tempted to like, maybe I should trade in for a new one. In fact, over the summer, I did a blue book on my car, and it was private party, middle of the needle, $61,000
Wow.
with 50,000 miles at the time. I was like, but the problem is you sell a car and it's your only car. What are you going to do to get another car? So that's one of the reasons why I didn't sell my Y at the peak was like, I'm going to get another one.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but with the recent price drops, I was like, I could get a brand new battery. It's 330 miles instead of 326, but then I'm like, I have the ultrasonic sensors, the
Mm,
new ones don't. So for me, I think in order to move into a new Model Y, it would either need to have like at least 10% more range. It would need to have, you know, much more upgraded computer. So maybe if hardware 4 comes out, but right now it wouldn't be really worth it to move into a new Model Y because it's so similar. Because I got the updated console.
mm.
I have the heated steering wheel and I have the updated console. So that's why I said the stars kind of aligned when I got my Y, is that I didn't have to wait for it. It had the refreshed center console because I was not a fan of the piano black. That was
Right.
fingerprint city.
Yeah, yeah.
But having the heated steering wheel does make a difference. You don't even have to turn on the heater until you're like below 30 degrees. So yeah, I don't know. I wish. Oh, air suspension. I wish I could adjust the height of suspension.
Mm,
And going back to my Bolt. So there were 2 times I seriously considered getting a used Model S. Back when I got my Bolt, a used S with a 75. I wanted a 75D. That was the problem. Was getting a 75D was more than getting a new Bolt. But I wanted the air suspension and the free supercharging, but that didn't work out.
mhm.
And again with getting this, but yeah, so being able to adjust because I want to go higher. I want to be able to go over some dirt roads. I'm not your typical like I'm more of like an not off-roader, but I would rather have a vehicle that's more tough for like hitting gravel roads and dirt roads, and than trying to have a lowered car with like tires this thin,
Uh-huh.
pothole. I want like Unplugged Performance has a pretty cool package now for the Model Y where you can get some pretty they raise you up about 2 inches and you get a fatter tire too. So you
Mm,
should check it out on Unplugged Performance. They got some
cool.
pretty cool pictures. Anyway, so yeah, I would want a more tough like like a Forerunner or more Jeep status
Mm,
the package. So
mhm.
yeah.
All right, cool. Well, that's some good likes and dislikes of the Model Y. Okay, I think I know the answer to this, but I ask everyone, so I'm just going to ask you anyway. Would you ever go back to a gas car?
Not willingly. Like I don't know. Like I I even before getting an EV, I didn't really like the smell of gasoline. In terms of my mind knew that it was a poisonous fume, so it's not like oh I love the smell of napalm in the morning. It's not a macho thing. It's more just I recognize that breathing that stuff is not healthy, and especially breathing it all the time. So breathing gasoline fumes as well as exhaust fumes, even just being around your garage. I remember there's a video Arnold Schwarzenegger made a few years back where he said, okay, you have 2 cars in a garage. You have a gasoline car and you have an electric car, and the door is closed. Which car would you want to sit in, breathing the air of? You're going to
Yeah.
pick the EV because you can That's the other bonus about EVs is you can precondition them, turn them on, without filling your garage full of poisonous, deadly gases.
Mhm.
And the thing I like to extrapolate from that is like at some point the entire Earth is just one big garage, and if all of us are driving around in gas cars with exhaust, we're going to fill our garage with too much poisonous pollution.
Yeah.
So why run that bet,
Yeah.
And some say that that just gets shifted to the coal plant. Well, then you have the conversation about cleaning up your grid, etc. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, so bringing it back to gas cars, I've driven a few gas cars since. So there was a CHR I drove a couple times. Um, I had a Matrix before
Mm.
my Volt, and we recently got it back in the family. My brother ended up buying it from the family that I sold it to. So my
Oh,
siblings have 2 of my hand-me-down cars, Um, and I drove the Matrix to check it out before it's just, I used to love driving manual. I'm big on manual. I don't really like automatics, but I feel like I drive my EV like a manual with the one pedal driving. I
Hmm.
feel like I'm driving it as if it's like in gear when I'm braking. So, but yeah, driving gas, it's just you just feel this. It's noisy. It's not as instantaneous. Even a turbo, there's turbo lag and stuff like
Hmm.
that. I think if I had to, I'd go to a plug-in hybrid,
Hmm.
like maybe a Rav4 Prime or. But it's just once you've done it for a long time, it's like why?
Yeah.
That's why I say not unless it was not willingly would I.
Yeah. And then how about if there was some sort of evil magic and all of a sudden your Model Y disappeared tomorrow? Would you buy that same car again?
I'd go get a new one.
Hmm. Right.
um, you know, the Kyle Connor says this pretty well is that the new cars are good. They're pretty good. The software's not the same as Tesla, but the cars themselves are pretty good. So if you had to start with your first EV today, you have a lot more options than you and I did back when we got our Bolts. Um, it's that I drive so much, I don't think I would want to deal with the current status of the CCS infrastructure on a daily basis. So as much as I like the EV6, the Ionic 5, I even have a soft spot in my heart for the BZ4X and the Solterra. That's a whole can of worms that someone probably wants to get into. But that car, I do support it as a car. The problem is the charging rate on it is abysmal. It's probably worse than our Bolts is actually.
Mhm.
Um, but there's a lot of good cars out there right now. It's just they're hampered by the fast charging network, as well as other individual issues of each car, whether the software or just reliability or whatever. But yeah, I would get another Tesla like now.
Mhm.
Start with a fresh, it's that new car smells type thing. I like my Y. By the way, the name of my Y is called Hank McCoy for all the Marvel fans out there.
Nice, nice.
It's my blue beast. Um, and yeah, I would get another Y. I'm interested in the Cybertruck if that ever came out, but it's just driving any electric truck is just it's such a big vehicle that I have a garage and my roommate has a motorcycle so in front of my car, so my Y takes up about as much room as I could. In fact, I don't think
Mhm.
I could fit an S in my current garage.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, if they gave the Model Y like a 350, maybe even it got closer to 400 miles, that would be a dream because it's so capable already with the 300 plus miles you have now that if you just have that little bit extra headroom, you can be fearless with the charging network, the range of the vehicle, the capability of it. Um, yeah, and I'm a limited case because I mean, yes, there are more rideshare drivers out there driving Teslas, but not everybody is a rideshare driver.
Mhm.
So if you're not driving 200 miles a day every single day, the current EVs out there are going to have plenty of range for you.
Mhm. Yeah, so to the listeners and watchers out there, Tollak has a Instagram account, Chargepozitive, and you feature a lot of times you feature your Model Y, but it's Tesla stuff, EV stuff. What made you want to start an Instagram with your electric vehicle?
Well, so first of all, it's positive where it's POZ. The positive is a Z. So I started it back when I had my Volt, and we can go through that whole history there. But it was around January 2019 was I think my first post with it, and you know, at that time, I mean, we still have a long way to go with in terms of showing everybody how it works and how it actually can work really well. But I wanted to basically highlight the benefits of everything that goes along with electrifying transportation, and showing how it can be done. And I started off with pictures mainly because that's before reels were a thing,
Mhm.
and so a lot of my early account is mostly pictures and a couple of like short videos, and then really last summer after like around the time of the Tesla takeover, I started really leaning into doing more reels.
Cool. Well, I know you got to get back to work pretty soon. Why don't you tell everyone where you are on social media, where they can find you?
Okay, so primarily Instagram, but I'm more active on Twitter now. I also have my Facebook mirrors my Instagram. It's connected to my Instagram, so technically I'm on Facebook as well. And I also have a little bit on TikTok. I was trying to cover all the bases, and I even have my YouTube set up. I've copied over some of my reels as YouTube Shorts. So yeah, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts, all under Chargepozitive with a Z, P-O-Z. So Chargepozitive.
Cool. All right, we'll put those links in all the descriptions wherever you find this podcast. Tollak, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me and do this interview in your Model Y. If you're not watching on video, he's in his Model Y right now. And you know what? I'm sure we'll bring you back on for maybe some Tesla Q&A or something. And yeah, we'll see you again.
Alrighty, it's been fun. Thanks.
All right, thanks so much.